from a marketing perspective, two really important metrics that come up again and again are cost of acquisition, that costs how much they cost you to acquire that customer, and then you might call it lifetime value or just revenue that you can assign to a specific customer by looking at their transaction activity. And then comparing those two is the sort of most important metric when you're reporting on the effectiveness of your campaigns. Is you spend so much money acquiring these customers, that's your customer acquisition. It could be something like $25 per customer once you wrapped up your campaign. And then the other side of the ledger was how much revenue did they bring in. So obviously, if the average account or customer brings in about $50 of revenue, it's not a bad kind of trade-off. But then, looking at those ratios can help you optimize and understand on a more kind of global level on, is your customer acquisition strategy effective? Is it profitable in that? And by looking at those ratio of revenue and cost, and then also dig deeper on a channel level and say, am I getting the right sort of balance between revenue and costs here on these different channels that you're employing? Another point, like in terms of something I've seen from personal experience, especially on what I was just mentioning between the cost of acquisition on one side and then you have the revenue on your other side, is that, as marketers, you can be really focused on the cost of acquisition because that is what you're interacting with every day. You are setting those budgets, whether it's on Facebook or, whether you're setting a budget for something like a print campaign in a magazine. That can be a really, really easy metric to focus on. And sometimes what can be misleading is you might have channels that look really good from a cost of acquisition area. So, maybe if it's like, maybe you do have a buyer persona that's, for example, a little more digital savvy, and you are a retail store that has both digital channels and in-store. And so maybe you do get really high number of conversions on the digital side. But if you're not measuring the revenue as well, it might not even be worth it. If you're acquiring really low value customers at a really cheap price, but if they don't justify the investment by looking at that revenue side, on one hand, sometimes marketers only report the cost of acquisition and say, we're able to acquire these customers at really, really low cost. But if you're not looking at revenue and then a related metric would be churn, to basically try and define the quality of those customers. If you're not looking at the quality, you're definitely seeing a really big piece. And sometimes the way organizations can be set up is marketers tend to own the funnel piece. They've got the customer in the door, got them to the first purchase. And maybe that it's another team, whether it's product or maybe it's, the kind of like a customer support team or some other function that's more meant to take over the rest of the journey from that first purchase. But if you're not kind of including that customer quality signal within how you evaluate your campaigns, can really distort your view on how different channels